Why would he? Do you think he made that comment?
Well, I can't speculate as to why he would say those things. Um, I can't speculate as to why that was his statement, but what I do know is that I think culturally, for what I can think of, I think culturally, mental health and depression, especially suicide, um, culturally in terms of the family as well, it's taboo. You know, it's a no-go area. It's something that won't happen to our child. It's something that couldn't have happened. Um, but I also know at the same time that he was well aware that Anele was on medication. We spoke about it many times. We had spoken about her sometimes getting off her medication, not being on her medication. Um, we had spoken after she had spent a week in a SICO, psychiatric hospital in Umhlanga.
Hmm.
So he was well aware that she had stayed there for a week. He was aware because me and him spoke at length about her suicide attempt in Durban. He was the one who picked her up from hospital. So we had spoken many times. Um, and it wasn't just us. Um, my mother had sat down with me after the Hilton Durban incident and had sat me down and said, "Son, are you aware? Are you aware of what this is going to take, and are you prepared to go the distance with somebody who with a condition like this? Do you understand it? Are you educated enough on the subject?" And I said, "Yes, Mom, I will do anything for her because I love her, and the way you raised me and the way I was taught is not to abandon somebody when you love them. How could I do that?" So I stuck it out, and as it pertains to her dad and what he said at the funeral, he knows these things. We've spoken about them. So to say that he didn't think she was suicidal, I don't know why he said that, but what I do know is that he was well aware of those things that I've
Hmm.
just listed.
And on the issue of the drugs, why did he make that point? You say you
Yeah,
are not currently abusing any substances.
yeah, yeah,
You were not on any drugs during your
yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
Was she on substances?
Like I said at the start of the interview, um, I'm not going to point fingers at Anele and say she was this or she was that, she was or she wasn't. For me, I'm here to speak, to protect her memory, to protect her legacy. That's what I'm here for. So you would have to ask him why he would say something like that.
The people who've questioned your decision to issue a statement on the eve of the Sunday newspaper reports, where
Mm-hmm.
two publications, I think, ran with the same story with the videos, which
Yeah.
they had got from a friend or
Mm-hmm.
friends of the late Anele, right?
Yeah.
Why go the route of a statement versus, for example, giving a quote to a newspaper? Were you responding to the inquiry firstly from the newspapers? Were you trying to
Mm-hmm.
preempt the reporting?
Yeah, I had gotten a call on the Saturday morning about the story that was going out on the Sunday. So I had gotten in touch with a member of my team, and I told him, "Look, this is what they're saying. So what do we do?" Um, Upon a lot of our own kind of piecing of things together, we believe that it is someone. I don't know who, but they've unlocked Anela's phone, right? And the papers had been sitting on the story for weeks, actually weeks. Not it wasn't a. I mean, also when you go to print for a story like that, as I understand, you print on the day on the Saturday, and then you go to paper. So to ask me in the morning, for me it felt very orchestrated, and a lot of what's going on in the media and also in the inquest um, feels orchestrated and feels like there's ulterior and kind of
Orchestrated by whom and
ulterior
for what
different
gaze?
different forces at play. Because for me, I thought, let me put this statement out to preempt and to address what's coming out in the papers tomorrow. I also felt that a quote wouldn't do it justice. I wanted to state my claim and say what I had to say. You asking me?
My question was, who
Oh,
A
oh,
would lead to the publication of these stories
Yes.
with an agenda?
Yeah.
And B, what would they have to gain?
People who want to blame me, people who want to make me the person responsible. That would be the motive. And the gains, there are no gains in a situation like this. Anele is gone. We can never bring her back. So I wouldn't say it's gains, but I know there's a lot of trauma on all sides. I know people are grieving, they're mourning, and I can't understand their process. But what I do know is the people who are providing the papers with these, videos and these clips, the timing of it is something that I'm paying attention to, because when Anele was here and things were great and we were in love, but now it's she's gone. It's all in the papers. It's in the media. My character is being brought into question. So I just question the timing of it, and also the timing, of the videos, and I question the sources as well.
So, but do you at the very least understand why there'd be some anger directed at you, be it from
I totally
her friends and family, given precisely the fact that, yes, these are snippets into your relationship, but these are things that did happen. So when people are trying to make sense, especially of someone who, as we're saying, took their own life, they will try to look at the factors that may have contributed to that. And some would say, in fact, you were a part of that, maybe not entirely, but you may have been part of pushing her over the edge.
Myself and Anele's lives were intertwined. We were going to build a life together, like I said before. And it's impossible for whatever she was going through at any given time while she was with me not to have anything to do with me. I was her life, she was my life. However, it's important to look at things in the whole context. Anele had attempted suicide before. Anele had spoken about it many times before. And people know this. So when those things had happened, there was no blame on me then. There was no outcry against me then. But Anele made that decision. She took her own life, and I'm here to grieve. We all grieving, and however they want to express their anger is not up to me to dictate. I can just interpret it the way that I'm interpreting it.
At this stage, do you personally take on any kind of blame, any kind of accountability for where she was mentally at the time of her death?
I think it's impossible not to feel part and parcel of her mental and emotional state, especially if you're trying to build a life with her and become a husband and you're headed that way. But I think it's very important to also realize that Anele had a life before me. Anele was Anele before she met me. Also within our life, Anele had her own life, her own friends, and she was her own person. She was strong-willed, and you couldn't force her to do anything that she didn't want to do. So for instance, even when you talk about drugs and you talk about abuse and so forth, you couldn't force Anele to do anything that she did not want to do. Anele made her own choices. That was the type of woman that she was, and that's why I loved her so much. But it was also the sense, at the source of a lot of difficulties that we had. So to say that I'm responsible, I wouldn't use the word responsible, but I would definitely say that wherever she was at that point in her life, my life and hers were intertwined, yes.
I think it's worth saying, though, that you make the point about how she was strong-willed, she was stubborn, she made her own decisions, but the nature of abuse, even over and above your situation, is that even the strongest women can be abused despite being strong. So I think that's worth saying. But another thing that you said is that you think someone has now managed to get into her phone, and that's how the videos are now circulating.
Yeah.
But what we read was that she sent these videos to her friends because that's how terribly afraid she was of you. So how can you say for sure that she did not share the videos of her own accord with her friends?
Well, as I had read the article, it said it was an activist who does not, a GBV activist who does not want to be named. Is that how they put it? Who is this activist? A nameless activist. I don't understand.
Well, people could also make the
I
argument
also
that
don't understand. Every source is nameless. Everything is nameless. There is no accountability. Nobody is. So for me, it is in my opinion, and also for reasons that I can't disclose, there is information that has shaped my opinion, and that is my opinion. My opinion is that it is not a friend who has decided to step forward all of a sudden.
What is that information that has shaped your opinion?
I can't disclose that information.
Do you believe it is her family that's behind what's going on?
I can't point any fingers at her family.
When last did you speak to the Tembe family?
The last time I've spoken to the Tembe family in particular, her father, was the day after the funeral. I had gone to, see him the day after the funeral, before I was supposed to fly back to Joburg. I thought to myself, well, the right thing to do is to, like I had explained, because there was no time for closure. We had the arrangements for the funeral. We had the arrangements for, everything. It was hectic, flying her body up, all of that stuff. So we didn't have the opportunity to sit down. So I took it upon myself to say to him, Baba, listen, let's sit down tomorrow if you can, if you're willing to meet and if you have time. And he said yes. So I went back to their house and I sat down with him and I looked him in the eye and I attempted to give him the closure of what had happened.
What was that closure? Was it you recounting the events of the day his daughter died?
Well, for me, if I was a father, which I am a father, if something like that had happened, I would want the person who was with her to come to me and explain to me exactly what had happened. So I felt like I shouldn't just, it's the end, it's the funeral and off I go into the sunset. I need to go to him. He gave me his daughter's hand in marriage. So therefore I need to go sit with him and explain to him and recount to him the events that led up to this tragedy.
And what did he say to your explanation? How did he receive it?
He received it like a grieving father. He received it like a mournful father. He was upset. He was sad. He was heartbroken, and so was I.
What do you mean upset? Upset more towards sadness and heartbreak, or upset more towards not quite furious, but leaning towards anger?
I would say upset in the way that you've just lost an amazing, beautiful child that you've kind of, has gone into the world and you've tried your best to raise, and this tragedy has occurred and you're upset in the way things have turned out. It's hard to pinpoint to say he felt like this or he was leaning here or leaning here. He's shattered, just like I'm shattered, just like her family's shattered, just like my family's shattered.
In your statement that you've issued, you refer to innuendo both in and around the funeral, but also at the service itself. Mm-hmm. What were the comments that you found troubling during the service?
For me, it was at the time I didn't understand it. I think I have more clarity on why. I can only, like I said to you, I can only guess why. I have my own opinions why, but the innuendos were the ones of that she did not commit suicide. Also, the police minister being there, speaking, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand. I can understand, maybe he's a friend of the family, but the way it was done, I felt like there was kind of an undercurrent of something didn't feel right to me.
Explain why that is, especially because not everyone watched the funeral and heard what the minister said.
Yeah.
What were you told about his presence, and what did he say that makes you now look at his presence with some degree of suspicion?
Well, I think it's strange for me because I was a husband. I had paid lobola, right? So I thought that I would have an opportunity to also speak at a funeral to pay tribute to her. And I communicated that to the family through the person on my side who was handling things through to the family. And I got there and I sat down and I opened the book of the memorial and my name wasn't there.
Were you told it would be?
I was under the impression that I would be able to speak. I have a full eulogy written out for her. Maybe one day people will hear it. I think that people deserve to hear it one day. But I was under the impression that I would. I also was under the impression because of my husband, because I'd taken care of because I took care of the funeral arrangements, made sure that I buried my wife with dignity, in peace and with love and with care. So I thought I would be speaking at the memorial, but we didn't run the memorial side of things. We just took care of the burial.
I want us to clarify the issue of the police minister, so that when this there's no ambiguity around why you were uneasy with that.
Yeah, I'm getting to it. So after I see that I'm not being permitted to speak, I kind of take it in, and then I listen to the dad's kind of testimony, and then about she not committing suicide, and then the police minister wasn't scheduled to speak. But then they said something about we have to observe him and please, he has to come speak. And then up he comes to the podium and starts speaking. And I just felt like there was a lot of something didn't feel right to me.
Are you accusing the family and the minister of anything?
I said something didn't feel right to me. Something didn't feel right having his presence there, along with the father saying that this was not a suicide. The two together for me didn't equate.
And did you take that up then in your meeting with Anela's father the day after the funeral?
Yes, I did. I said, I don't understand. Why did you say that she didn't commit suicide? And his explanation to me was that he wants to preserve her memory. He can't have people in the media or social media talking about her that way, having her remembered that way as someone who was kind of depressive or suicidal. He can't, there was all these things are being said about his daughter. And at the time I agreed. It kind of made sense to me, like, okay, protect her memory at all costs and so forth. But in these last few weeks, it seems that that's not the case. It seems that as time goes on now, I'm going to seem to have to lay more, out there about the nature of our relationship, the nature of our differences, and ultimately the nature of her and me and the life we had together.
But how does that link to what happened at the funeral? You now needing to speak and reveal more about your relationship.
I also feel that linking to the funeral, we're talking about the minister, right? And we're talking about the innuendos, because that's where the genesis of this discussion was, this question was, right? It's also in the fact that there are certain things which don't sit right with myself and my legal representatives. We asking the questions, for instance, like, what type of inquest is it when, obviously there's a trial by media, obviously there's going to be a trial by media, but also, for instance, Zinhle being interviewed, detectives flying up from Cape Town to interview Zinhle. Why? What is the direction of this inquest? Am I a suspect? And also at the same time, as far as I remember, I'm a husband. Why am I not being updated on the status of the inquest? Why is it just that side of the family that's being updated? So these are kind of inconsistencies that we kind of are kind of perched up, and we think, well, hold on a minute, that doesn't quite sit right. How do the newspapers know certain information? How do the papers know I was interviewed 3 times? How?
What were you told when you were interviewed 3 times?
How do the newspapers know that Zinhle was interviewed by a detective? How do they know that? Those are the questions that we're asking. So when you ask about innuendo, and you ask about him saying that there was no suicide, and you ask about why I felt something wasn't right about the minister being there, that's what I'm talking about.